Welcome to the Fandom Foundries podcast about the creators, why they create, and the things they love to create so we can learn to also be future creators. I am joined by, I should introduce myself first. I'm Todd Oxtra, host today of the Fandom Foundry, and I'm joined by Scott Lembcke. Scott, did I get that right?
Yep. It's got lots of constants on the row, so there's a lot of failure methods for it.
I even put in my notes, I put Lembkey and question mark. So if you saw that, that was me just to make sure I get it right. Scott is a designer, programmer, and writer at Howling Moon Software locally in Inver Heights, Minnesota, which is where my co-host lives. Beautiful Minnesota.
Really?
I first met you at 2DCon, which is basically a video game conference in Bloomington, Minneapolis area, and they had a developer room, which was very cool. Got to meet a lot of local developers, all types of games. And then I saw your game, and it looked really, really cool. And we're going to talk about that. And I said, I'll be in touch. And here we are. And that was that August, I think, of last year?
Yep, end of August is 2DCon.
There we go. And I think we're in a good place with Minneapolis because we have 2DCon, we have VGM, which is video game music, and then we have a lot of other shows as well. So it's great to have the opportunity to find the cool people in our neck of the woods that are making awesome things. So with that, Scott, we're going to get really into a lot of different areas. But before we do, I just want the people to get to know a little bit more about you. So I always ask people to give me their geek origin story. So a little bit about you, kind of some of the fun things that made you the person you are and how that kind of led you to be a developer. We'll get into the kind of those steps there, but kind of like what is your origin story and how you became the person that loves making video games today?
Okay. So growing up, we always had, computers. So been, like early 90s for my first memories of working with computers. But at some point, I'd found in like our storage area, my dad had a Atari 800, the computer version, not the game console.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, wanted to know what that was. And it was like, okay. So he got it out and helped me set it up. And you could, when you turned it on, it had a little BASIC cartridge you could stick in there and you could program it in BASIC. And I think that was kind of like the first point where I was, sort of starting to realize that, I couldn't really do anything interesting with it. I could, do the classic, thing where it just loops over and over and says, like Scott, or whatever, right?
Absolutely.
But it was, sort of like that moment that like sort of like demystified computers, like, oh, I can do this. And from there, I think, we had Macs growing up, and so Apple had something called HyperCard, which was sort of like super amazing for its day. It was this like hyperlinked programming environment thing where you had like basically like pages. It was called a stack, so you'd have cards in a stack. And you could move between them, so you could kind of just set things up really easily. So like you click a button and it moves from one page to another, so you could do like multimedia stuff. But it had like this little button you could click to like script things, and I was like mystified by that as well. Like, oh, this is like that thing from the Atari 800 where you can type in stuff and it does things.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, like realizing that like, oh, like, well, I'll just try it, and I would type in like English stuff, like make the button move to the right, and that wouldn't work, right? So then my dad was like, well, I mean, like, here's the instruction. It was like 500-page instruction manual for it that I read
black and white,
cover to cover in 4th grade.
Wow. So yep. I'm just pulling up some images so people can kind of see some of these tools because they are, I would say, ancient in a lot of ways, but I grew up with a lot of these things. So when you talk about HyperCard, is this what you're talking about?
Yep, that's HyperCard.
Oh, wow.
It's sort of kind of web-like in a way, but without the networking. You could like make pages that are linked together with interactive parts on them and stuff. This was all like mid-late 80s stuff that it was built with, and it was kind of just amazing. And famously, the game Myst was made with HyperCard. And at some point, I was told that it was like HyperCard. I was like, wait, what? Really? Like mash some of the keys that you normally use when using HyperCard, and like up pops the message box, which is sort of like the little like command prompt you could type in like snippets of code to test out to see if they worked right. And sure enough, yep, you could like type in stuff and like fiddle around and kind of interrogate like how did Myst work. And that was, the point where I'm like, hey, I could do this. That like I know what this is, and I made like a couple like failed Myst likes. I say failed, unfinished Myst likes.
Sure.
It was me drawing 1-bit graphics pictures, black and white pictures, and linking them together. But yeah, so that was maybe like the first time, like early '90s, where I'm like, hey, I can make a game. This is something that I can do, because we had these computers that had programming languages on them. Is
that something your dad had like just an interest in? Did he use computers in his career? Or?
Not really. I mean, so he was like a family doctor, the person you'd go to see if like have a checkup or whatever. He just likes computers because he thought they were cool.
Sure.
So he was really into that sort of stuff. And yeah, I just sort of like just picked it up because it was this thing. They're like, I can make whatever I want, whatever I thought that was in the early '90s or whatever, what computers were. But yeah, and so I always just kind of had like a interest in learning how to do programming from that. And just yeah, I kind of miss how like accessible some of that stuff was back in the day.
Yeah, programming languages have evolved. I mean, so many things. Even before there was mouse interface, obviously, developed from all those things. So based on that, then we were like, I need to take some classes. I know schools sometimes had a computer lab. Sometimes it was pretty basic. Ours, I believe, had like Apple IIe's or something. It was very old, but that was about it. And then maybe you could do some limited networking, maybe if they were connected. But I mean, dial-up wasn't even a thing when I went to high school. So, were you able to then obviously go outside of what your dad could provide? And then what was that like?
I mean, no, I was a kid. I had like whatever I had access to on our family computer, but. The schools did have computer labs, but my experience was it was the thing that you went to when you needed to do like the typing class, and you were not allowed to touch them otherwise. Yeah. They had all these computers in a lab that no one was allowed to touch or use. It's kind of maddening.
Got it. Oh wow, that's interesting because now. You're probably like a little jealous because like, wow, imagine if I had all these tools, like what's like Minecraft, using Minecraft to program and all of these different things. And it's like, wow, it's amazing. But learning the way you learned provides you a different set of skills.
Yeah, I do wonder what they'll be like. What someone's similar story today would be. There's tons of ways to get into programming now. It's just none of them are like how it was when I was, the things that I'm nostalgic for. So, I do wonder how different or similar it is.
I mean, you'd have a different perspective, right? It would have taken you down a different path in the type of games. And so with that, what were the type of games that influenced you? I mean, what was kind of like, ooh, I like this. And was that part of the journey?
Yeah, growing up with, we had like a Super Nintendo and the Atari. We had a bunch of games for that as well. But otherwise, the newer computers we had in the 90s were, like Macs. And so there was Ambrosia Software that made like the best shareware games for Mac. And one of their games, like Escape Velocity, I probably played 1,000 hours of that game. It's kind of like it's sort of like a 2D version of Elite, where you fly around in the universe and you trade stuff and you pick up missions and fight pirates and you upgrade your ship, and that was a great game. I wanted to make a game like that for a long time.
I've never heard of this company, and we just had a gentleman on to do a a podcast that's going to come out. It's called he developed a book about Mac software, and then he also did a project on shareware. And
Richard something or another.
Yes, Richard Moss. Yes.
Yeah, I have his book.
Yes. Yeah, we interviewed him.
I'm not gonna get it, but
he was amazing. That's going to be outside. Definitely, we talked all through his things, but it was kind of interesting the areas he got into, and like Ambrosia software. He didn't even touch on that. Wow. So with them, what was there like? Because I know particularly with getting software is interesting because you were in big box stores that had software. There was like a lot of mom and pop. Sometimes people were selling software in baggies and things like that. So with the way you got software, I mean, were you just going to a local PC store, a Mac store, or how did you discover these things?
So that was like right at the beginning of the internet age. And we had like dial-up fairly early on because my dad liked computer stuff. And so it's like 94, 95, we had dial-up. I think it was maybe about the time, or 96. It doesn't really matter. That's fairly early on. And so that was just the, like what you found when you looked for MacShare, where it was Ambrosia stuff. Magazines used to have CDs in them, and there was one in particular called Mac Addict, that monthly magazine that came with a CD. And so every month, you'd get like a new disc of demos to play, and like honestly, it was like almost all the time I had to play games was like the games from that month from the demos.
Yeah, it was very common. That was because I remember shareware was being a big thing. You go like, and then that grew to GameStop or whatever the store was. They would sell you. Or they just, I think maybe for 99 cents you could get like the Doom shareware disc, like 3.5-inch floppy, and get it there. And then you started seeing the CD-ROMs in magazines, things like that. I wasn't aware of the Mac scene for that though, so that's really cool because Mac has had an interesting life in the world of gaming,
especially in the 90s.
So much of it started there. Yeah, exactly. It started, so much was there, and then it was kind of like there was a shift. Probably when Steve Jobs came back and said, "No, we're going to make awesome." Basically consumer level electronics, and we're still going to have our PCs and we're going to have our computers, but still it's going to be those things kind of lead the way. And I've always felt like, man, there's such a cool space for even like a Mac Mini or even a Apple TV. I think is a great place where those games could shine because the App Store is on everything now.
Yeah.
So that leading us to the early 2000s. That leads us to obviously getting older, getting more experiences there. Did you start falling down a path of computer science, an educational track that took you there? What was that like?
I was always a kid that liked math and science in school, and so college, computer science. So I was going to do computer science, and because I wanted to make video games, but I also wanted to have the background for it. And yeah, it was kind of funny too. That's freshman year in college. So I went to University of Minnesota Morris, which had a particularly good computer science program for what it was, I guess.
Yeah.
It was always kind of funny when we went to programming competitions. People would ask, "Oh, where are you from?" And we said we were from Morris. So on more than one occasion, I went, "You're the ones that are going to win." In fact,
that's good. You're intimidating.
Yeah. But yeah, so as a freshman, they start you off as doing Scheme programming, or a language that no one has ever used, because they want it to be this equalizing factor that some students are going to come in with no experience, and some are going to come in, that they already know how to use C or C++ or something like that, or Visual Basic, or whatever. Just they started learning with. But Scheme is I'm not going to try to describe Scheme. It's sort of the
Okay.
It's very old language, super flexible, but it's not used very often. It's kind of more of the thing that people academics get really excited about. It's more so than like it gets used in industry. So it was the equalizing factor, and like a lot of like incoming students also want to do computer science to make games, but then like they immediately were like, oh, this is hard. There's like math and stuff involved, and then, like half of the computer science students coming in as freshmen like went to somewhere else, which that was kind of interesting. But for me, yeah, like the math and the programming part was always like the best part of doing game development stuff. So I was
so so with college, what was ended up where you landed? Was it in software development, or what was your actual degree like when you graduated? What did you receive, and then kind of like what were your paths then to say like, well, I could do X, Y, or Z?
Well, I was a liberal arts college, so I had a BA in computer science and some minors and some other whatever math and stuff. And like the first job I got was at a place called Infinite Campus. They made school information software.
Oh, we're all aware as parents.
Okay, I was going to say, like, especially in the Midwest, you're probably familiar with it. And the business partner that I still have today, we met in college, and before we graduated, we just sort of had this idea that like, hey, like we work really well together. Like we had some projects that we worked on together, and we decided, hey, this works really well. We should like think about continuing, like this, doing like, doing a startup to do games or whatever. And so we really only like we both worked at Infinite Campus, so we could stay like close by. And we worked there for like a year and a half, I want to say, just long enough that we like saved up enough money to start our own business off of. And like, we're both fortunate enough that we had like lots of scholarships and such going to college. So we didn't have a lot of like, loans or debt coming out of it. And so we basically just, despite having like, full-time jobs that paid well as software engineers, we just kept living like we were in college and saved up almost all the money that we made, and then used that money that we made in a year and a half to live off of for like several years, basically. So
wow, that's good planning, right? A lot of people wouldn't have done that. Like, oh, every little bit when you're getting your first job, everything you spend, like, oh, I need to buy X, Y, and Z, and you need a brand new car, and it's like, oh, I have no money.
Yep, I had a old beater of a car from the 90s, used car. So drove that one into the ground basically before finally getting a new car, as it were. But otherwise, like I bought a laptop and a TV, but it was the Best Buy brand, so it wasn't.
There you go, the insignia. Yeah, got to go with that. So you and your partner now. So what is your partner's name, and kind of like what are the two roles that you have within kind of your partnership? You're kind of like, how do we divide and conquer? And was that when you formed Howling Moon Software, or was it something different at the time?
Yep, no, that was Howling Moon Software. So 2009, January 1st was basically when we quit our jobs and started doing Howling Moon Software stuff, because we had kind of done some stuff on the side. We'd worked that out that with Infinite Campus, thought that was fine. That if we wrote games on the side, that didn't infringe with their business. We did have to like specifically ask for the permission to do that, because they had like the standard contract that like whatever you make outside of your working hours belongs to us, and we went, no, that's not okay. And so we that was a thing where we asked them, like, hey, we want to work on these other things, we want to like remove this from our contract, and they were okay with that. But that's maybe something I would recommend to people is like when you come across those sorts of like clauses and contracts, you can say no, and you can ask to have it revised.
I mean, that's very smart, because to your point, I mean, what you're working on, you may not view it as like intentional, but they may like, well, we may like what you make, and we want to now own that, which, that's really painful, but that's a good point that you actually were aware of that. Obviously, not everybody has a lawyer, not everybody looks at contracts, not everyone assumes what will be actually restricted. So that's a very smart decision. So I'll take a step back. The name. What was the genesis for that?
So I don't know if I'm Andy Korth is my business partner. I forgot if I said that when you said name, but yeah. So Howling Moon Software. We thought it was a really clever name when we first came up with it, and it turns out that maybe not so much. Because if you search for Howling Moon blank, you'll come up with Howling Moon Games, Howling Moon, yes, we're Howling Moon Software, but there's Howling Moon Studios, Howling Moon Games, everyone is thought of this.
Howl at the Moon, the piano bar.
Yeah, everyone's thought of this pun before, and they all have the same logo, which was half of the thing. We're like, oh, we have this great, punny logo idea that we could do. Yeah. That's a moon with a silhouette of a wolf on it. It turns out everyone else who's thought of this pun name has thought of that same logo, because of course they did. So in retrospect, it wasn't a good name, but
SEO is hard, right? Who has a trademark? Even every good pun podcast name is taken. So you really have to.
At the time when we looked it up, there weren't really any others.
Oh, that's great.
So we thought it was super clever, and now there's just tons of them. And it's one of those things where are we supposed to have vigorously defended our trademarks or something, and it's well, oops, oh well.
So the name was more fun, but yourself and your partner, like I said, what is when you said we're going to go into this, is it more of you had an idea of well, I'm really good at X, I'll handle X, or was it just we'll figure it out when we get there what we're gonna have our role within the companies?
We're fairly so we're both programmers, and so we intended to do programming heavy stuff, and hire in artists and stuff. But I will say Andy and I work really well together, because there's a lot of tedious-y type things in programming that I think are tedious that he kind of likes, doing UI and stuff like that. He is willing to tackle that stuff versus the mathier stuff. He can do it as well. He just doesn't really like to so much necessarily. And I'm, I'll always go, ooh, there's math to be done. Ooh, let me do that part. I mean, there's lots of other examples, but yeah, so I feel we kind of mesh together pretty well in terms of, as two programmers on a team, there's always different parts of a project that we want to work on separately, but yet also we have the experience that we could, do it all, and we work together well that way. So
I mean, that's when it comes to team, you need complementary people. You need some people to do things you don't want to do. So I love how you kind of embrace that. And you've been together now, you said, since 2009. So it's been 17 years.
Yep.
Amazing. So with that, we've talked a lot about your background, the company, and we probably should kind of talk about the cool stuff, which is. I looked at your release schedule, just kind of see all the things you've done, because when I came across when I came across you at the con, I saw what you were currently working on. Very cool. And then I looked at your project list that I'll be sharing. But your first game that you released was Verdant Skies, 2018. Or am I wrong?
Maybe I'm wrong. Game that we released. First game we released was Crayon Ball for Mac, I guess.
Oh, really?
So then 2008.
Oh, it's not even on your list. Wow.
It's kind of hard to find. Easiest place to find screenshots. Go to flathub.org and search for Crayon Ball.
Crayon Ball. Okay, awesome. Well, even further back, that's awesome.
That was the first game that we kind of put together, because I had made a physics engine as part of my senior thesis in college, a 2D rigid body physics engine. So it's we should throw something together with this to make a game out of it. So we made kind of a match 4 puzzler game with that called Crayon Ball, that was all about having Yeah, so you found it on our website there.
It was buried in your website, so
we don't have links directly to it anymore. It's because we don't really sell it anymore exactly. But yeah, so you have this physics simulated bin of balls, and as they touch, they get the little black lines between them, and once you get enough of them, you can match them out as a group, and then they all kind of tumble in more and more. So it was kind of a unique one, and it actually did really well on Mac. We made a Windows port of it, which I think we sold 12 copies of ever, just by trying to post it as many places as we could, and just no one cared. I don't know. There's just too many other games. I mean, it's easy to be a big fish in a small pond, I would say.
But I mean, I'm looking at the artwork. I mean, obviously, you're taking what a lot of people would say, "Oh, it's a match 3 game or whatever," right? But this was way back in the infancy where this was a great artistic choice. I mean, using so that gets me to the point. Art. We talked about the programming, the art side, and the music side. So how does that work with your team?
We usually hire that out. Most of the art for this game was actually made for a friend of ours from college as well, named Tyler Hutchinson. And a couple of them are from webcomic people that he knows. Like that was
great.
Nedroid, if I'm remembering the name correctly.
Okay.
Made that one. Oh yeah, it's a Nedroid's horse party theme. So yeah, like he got like some because he was big into like the webcomic scene, and he asked a bunch of them, "Hey, do you want to make a theme for this game that we made?" And a bunch of them said yes, and they didn't even want royalties or anything. It was like, well, okay, cool. Not that we had any money to give royalties. It wasn't that successful.
Well, exactly. Like you get exposure, you get, what helps. But I mean, it is indicative of it's not just one art style, and it's very neat. And you can see everyone's perspective on there on something that, obviously easy to explain, but when you see it on the screen, you're like, wow, that looks really cool. It pops, brings your work to life. That's great. What about the music? Is the music, what ties it all together? I guess I'd say you've got an idea, you guys know how to make it, but then the theme of the music is that kind of like you just start brainstorming, go, I want this to have not even just from the orchestral or just the regular background music, but also the sound effects and that stuff. What's that process like?
It's kind of mixed. So usually, there's a pretty active game dev community in Minneapolis. We have a IGDA group here, IGDA-TC, that has like monthly meetings and has for like a couple decades now. And there's always someone we knew from those that like was looking for, work doing, music or sound or something. So we would usually like go to them and hire them. And a lot of that would be driven, they as, audio professionals drove a lot of that, that like they would play the game and be like, okay, so here's what I think your game needs. And like would bounce some ideas back and forth. And so that's been a really good resource of like talented people to work with. It's when you can work with experts, you can, get something nice out of that without having to, necessarily know a lot of the language of it yourself. Like me talking about like, what we want in music, I'd be like, well, I feel like I want you want it to feel a certain way, but beyond that, I don't know how to talk about like, oh, it needs, more key changes or something, or it needs to be in a minor scale. Like I kind of know what some of those mean, but those are the only two examples I can think of. So.
I totally get you talk about. My son is a music major at the University of Minnesota. He's telling me what he's learning, and I'm like, holy cow.
So it's definitely great to leverage experts.
Exactly. And really what it's like even an artist or something, you kind of like, this is what I want, and I'll know I like it when I see it. And they're like, okay, what are the elements? And then obviously you I like that, but do this. And it's like, obviously that's a collaborative effort. You got to work with people that aren't going to hurt their feelings if you say, change this. And like you said, sometimes typically they'll play the game and then be inspired. Is that always possible? Or is it kind of like, we've got to do this parallel path because we're at a deadline or something? Or do you typically like, we will definitely have something playable to then give everyone else the pieces they need to be a success?
I mean, there's always like something you can give them, even if it's like a roughly half broken dev build or whatever, that they can kind of like see kind of what you're going for, and you can like talk about the parts that are, hey, that's placeholder graphics, or that this is supposed to look like like bigger, grander, what you can describe a lot of that stuff to give them the idea, and then they can be like, hey, actually like I could do this with the music that would do this, or this with the art that would make it look this way, and then that's kind of really good to talk about too. There, where there's some people that we work with, like artists or sound people, that's they kind of just want like a document where you've like spelled out everything that you want, and then they can just like check the boxes and do it. And they're really good at what they do, but they're not like the designers or the
concept artists, or
no, the term I'm looking for is like a. Oh, I I'm blanking on it. Like, when you have like a lead artist, they're the ones that are like making the style for the game. They're like set what it looks like,
Sure.
and like that sort of thing. And they're going to be directing the concept artist to make something.
It's like a style guide or like a mood book or something like that, where mood board, where it basically incorporates its own and people can build off of that. Is that kind of what you're?
Yeah, but I mean, more to the point, like it can be really valuable to have to work with someone who knows, can look at something like, I know what this should look like. How about like this? And then they can like start making art with a consistent theme and a style without being told what it is. Because like I said, there's perfectly talented people who just want to be told, like, okay, give me some examples, and they can make really great stuff, but they don't really care to make the decisions about deciding what that style is. So it's very helpful, especially on a small team, to have like the artist that you're working with be someone who's willing to take on like discovering what the style should be.
Yeah, it's that intuition that will get you 95% of the way there, right? And then you're there to like, yes, but, or yes, and more. And then it kind of builds on it. So then they, you're kind of on the same page. You're like, I don't have to worry about anything. They're going to deliver. They're going to know what I want before I even say it, which is an amazing way to work.
They're going to tell you what you want. You're going to go,
exactly.
Oh, I do. I want that. That's great.
Yeah. No, you're right. Oh yeah, I do want that. Yeah. That's where that collaboration, that synergy comes together, and it's very hard to find that. So it's awesome that you've been able to achieve that, and then you get to know people with their talents, and then I'm assuming other people, like they recommend other people. So it almost becomes like a ability for you to almost have like an idea of who would work well because of that experience. But then you may be introduced to somebody new or meet somebody new, like, wow, you're the greatest thing ever since sliced bread. So that community of creators has got to be very amazing just to have. Now that you've been working at this so long, people, you probably recommended people for work, and that helps everyone. As you grow, you've seen probably people succeed and do cool things and moved on, and then other people that like want to pivot. So that's amazing. So we've got Crayon Ball. Thank you for the pivot on that. So I'm thinking about this with Crayon Ball. You're like, hey, budget, whatever. Did you have a budget for Crayon Ball? Did you have an understanding of it was just... Hey,
we wrote it in our free time when we were working at Infinite Campus, and we released it, the Mac version we'd had out for like 6 months or so before then. It was doing some okay sales to the point where we thought like, and it was a game that took us 2 or 3 months, free time to make, and kind of thought that like, hey, if we can keep making small games that sell this well, like, and we have like 4 or 5 or 6 of them, selling at once, that, as they kind of tail off, and, the older ones, stop, getting sales. And like, we were kind of thinking like, we could maybe make this sustainable. And I've lost my train of thought. But
budget in sales. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yes. We didn't really have a budget so much because we were working on it in our free time, but we did kind of, start looking like, hey, yeah, because we could do this. And we made like a couple like small Mac utilities as well that we're selling. Okay. So that we just kind of like assumed that we could build from there. And so it's more about, like how much time do we want to spend on things once we, quit our actual paying job to try and do this full time. And it, like right, as we were leaving Infinite Campus was kind of when the iPhone App Store was a new thing as well. And so we put
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yes and no.
Well, true. I mean, maybe I think it's awesome, and maybe it's not from a development standpoint and in finding a game, right?
Well, really early on in the App Store, like there was like a couple hundred total apps available for it. And, we had made a version of Crayon Ball for, the iPhone within a few months of that coming out. I don't remember the exact dates, but like there wasn't a lot of competition at the time. And so like, small indie, supporting this up and coming platform, we actually were able to get quite a few sales of Crayon Ball on the App Store. But it also tailed off like extremely quickly. Like it kind of, like, oh, we had sales, and then they just kind of fell off and they never recovered. And the second game we made for that was Twilight Golf. It was just kind of like a simple like game with fancy real-time shadows in 2D, with another physics-based
You've got to love a website that says the plugin is no longer supported.
Yeah, that was an old Flash video thing.
Well, try Life Golf for free now. So,
yeah, not really worth finding a video of it exactly, but
totally get it.
it's just like another like simple game that we made that one in like a month, I want to say, to just try and like
the logo change throughout time too.
A little bit. It's also not quite circular in those old ones. It's something we didn't discover for quite a while. Whoops.
Well, I'll get it off the screen so we're not picking on it.
Yeah. It's like the Twilight Golf game. Like, it's for what it was. It still felt like pretty high quality. It was very like short experience, like a lot of the stuff at the time was. But like it got like nice reviews on the App Store, but very few sales. Because it was already by that time, like all the big companies were going, oh, you can make money on the App Store. And it's just sort of like they all came in, and our experiences was that like kind of never able to make money on there again, and everything went to freemium.
Or 99 cents, if even that. Yeah, I remember those games were all 99 cents. I'm like, okay.
Yep. So it became very difficult to make any money on there. And in fact, the Mac version of Crayon Ball outsold the iPhone version by like 10 to 1 or something like that. I'm making up numbers, but it was by a lot. Because it was easier just to, because people buying a Mac game were willing to pay $10 for some random indie shareware thing that puzzle color matching game. And we could, post about it, and people would see it again and go, "Oh, that's neat," and we get more sales in a way that just was difficult to do on any other platform.
So, this is going to be showing my like lack of knowledge about. I was not a Mac user at all. So, with PC, obviously, it's a little bit more open ended. Windows is very like laissez-faire. You don't really have to have Microsoft approve everything. Now with Mac, though,
Macs used to be that way.
Okay, I was wondering about that because I just trying to remember if there was any type of approval that Apple needed to prove on software. Or was just as long as you know how to program it would work on your computer.
Yeah, well, actually, that's kind of so. The version of Crayon Ball that we had for Mac, Apple used to just have like a download site, like software section on their website where you click software, and it was just like a community thing. Anyone could upload anything, and they would give you a little page and put a description, and you could download it from there. And that was great, and that was where most of the people discovered our game from when we looked at like the web analytics and stuff. And then they made the Mac App Store based off the success of the iOS App Store, and then you did have to kind of sort of ask for Apple's permission. And it also had the same model where everything was erased to the bottom in pricing because there was only one storefront and one place to get it seen, and it had to be either like a top-selling app already, or it had to be picked by Apple's staff to show up on the front page. And our sales for Mac Crayon Ball went and never recovered. And it was just very difficult to market stuff on like the App Store.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when Starbucks would provide cards. It's the app of the week or the song of the week. And they would get a card and you would be able to put in your iTunes account and you get a game or you get a song. It's so different now. It is so different. I don't know how anybody gets recognized. It's hard to get discovered. That's interesting. So, but I think that's where indie games on other platforms have kind of really changed the game. You see a game just kind of like come out of nowhere because somebody finds it and talks to people. So I think that's where hopefully,
and for all its faults, like Steam is halfway decent at promoting indies. Like there's a lot of like criticism that people have about how they do it, but like they're kind of the only platform that tries. So yeah,
I mean, everybody opens up Steam, and then even when they're doing their sales or something like that, then you're seeing people actually stream the game within Steam, which I think is fun because then that tells you about it. They have people talking about it, or it does give people an avenue to get discovered, games to be found, and that Steam rating is pretty unique. I don't think any other console or anything else has that type of user rating. And I know that can be weird, like a Rotten Tomatoes or something like that, where it's like skewed, but it does seem like it carries some weight compared to other, or if even other platforms have the ability to actually say if a good game is considered good or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Steam just I don't know. A lot of developers are going to talk about there's a bit of a love-hate relationship with Steam.
Sure.
Where, like, as a developer, they're like less enthused about Steam. As a player, they love Steam, but also like they're probably going to talk about how they dislike other platforms even more.
Exactly. Yeah. Having launchers, multiple launchers on your PC is like poison. It's like I need one launcher to rule them all. That's my dream. So I always ask people, like, do you have one that'll consolidate all your games? Because it's hard to get everything to know what you own. So after Twilight Golf, Crayon Ball, what came next? What was that next step in the journey that kind of led you to what you consider kind of like a really important place where you were able to keep the company moving forward and obviously learning along the way and adapting to the modern gaming space?
Yeah, so fairly early on, we started taking contracts working on other games. So like we worked with some other people we knew from college, Gravic Interactive. Their website's now gone. They've kind of we talked a little about Firefly VR earlier. That's Gravic Interactive now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Firefly. But yeah, we worked with them on a bunch of games like very, very early on in like the Unity days, like Unity like 2.0, I guess it was. And so we made some web games for Disney. There was a Phineas and Ferb game that we made.
Oh, really?
Some for Warner Brothers as well. Yeah,
so
actually,
if you went to like their Disney XD website, they would be there.
We were the first 3D game that was made using Unity. Maybe there's probably like 3D-ish Flash games before that, but yeah, we were the first one that they started putting Unity Web Player back when that was a thing. It was the Phineas and Ferb game that we made.
Is that game still? Is it gone from history now?
It's not on their site anymore, but you can totally find it if you look around the internet. And amusingly, this came up like a couple months ago, and I looked on YouTube, and there's still people making like playthroughs of that game, and like the comments are all like, "Oh, this game was so good," which is like reading the comments now is like, people really liked this game. They really remembered it like fondly, and
oh wow, there's a Reddit thread on it. I love this. The fact that
Dimensionators of Doom or Transportnators of Doom is the ones we made.
Let's see. Does it even say? Well, I will have to look in more into that. It's kind of me just kind of looking Phineas for Unity platformers, what it says. So I think it's kind of like the history of them, maybe. But yeah, so that's kind of neat to have that piece. And like I always said, the fact that there is no, there's been a couple of video game like museums and documentaries, and it's like you just kind of like, where is all this going? Is it just going to end up on the Internet Archive? And that point, does Disney still want to control that, or does it just go away? And it's kind of crazy that, yeah, which is just kind of sad because that's like a part of your like, I did this and I want to show people and like kids like my son when they were growing up. There was so many like Animal Jam and all those weird games that probably are dead, and they were a thing for kids.
Yeah, based on same thing with like old consoles or old computers and stuff. Like the games run poorly on new things, if at all. And like getting them requires tracking down an old copy or the high seas, as they say. So it's. And like the web stuff is kind of like even worse than it. Like a lot of that's just like the technology that ran it is gone.
Newgrounds, was a huge place for games.
Ruffle is like a Rust-based reimplementation of Flash that runs in your browser that you like as WebAssembly, which is kind of like amazing because like as of a few years ago, it sort of like brought a lot of that back, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, because I know GOG is doing a lot of like game preservation as they try to go back, because a lot of those DOS emulators and those old engines and source code just sometimes being lost through time because a lot of video games publishers, developers no longer exist, and even Nintendo, like they're probably been around the longest, and they don't even. They have their museums now, but it's like even there, I'm like, I wonder how much they've lost because they just didn't find it valuable. It's like all those Doctor Who episodes that the BBC made that. They lost, or they found somebody had a copy of it, and it's like, oh wow, we lost so much of our history. So, and I don't know you as your company is like, is that something you'd be like, well, we're always in the future, we will always make sure that we have something documented, the source code and stuff. Like, how do you protect that?
So actually, this is something I've thought about quite a bit for Veridian Expanse. I'm just going to make it open, so it's already open source. If you download the developer builds of it right now, the source code is in the resources.zip file that has all the game data in it. For the 1% of people who care to like see that or use that or whatever, there it is. It's the version of the source code that data was built against. So they can build it for another platform. You can technically run it on like OpenBSD or FreeBSD or Raspberry Pis. When I demoed the game at 2DCon, you saw it running on Raspberry Pis.
Really, that's impressive. I mean, sometimes, I mean, I have a mini PC that I do an arcade build on. Obviously, that's Windows based, all that fun stuff. But Raspberry Pi, I mean, get that thing down to the metal, and you can do a lot with it, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, Linux and all those different operating systems that allow you to do those things. I mean, it's growing. Steam obviously is, they're trying to grow Steam OS and different things, and that's very cool that it can run that way. So with that, I mean, I just imagine, Scott, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, somebody will come up to you and say, I use your source code and now I have developed something, or it started them. I mean, I think that's kind of the seeds that are going to be left behind from all of the development community, that like, it's like what mods were a big part of, like people becoming developers because they got that work or they did it and somebody hired them. I think Randy Pitchford thinks it's how he got famous, was doing mods for Half-Life, Blue Point, things like that. So I think that's there's so many ways to get into the industry in a weird way. So the fact that you could be giving someone kind of like a path in, that's amazing. I love that. So
yeah, and like if you look into the README, like kind of specifically, it's like preservation. Like I don't know if anyone's going to find my code useful necessarily. If they do, that's great. But like more to the point, I wanted it like to be available later when like the game doesn't run on this or that anymore. That someone can just build it again themselves, maybe, or whatever. And I get some people asking like, well, aren't you worried about piracy? I'm like, within 10 minutes of the game being posted on Steam, it will be on pirate sites. They don't need my source code, and they don't want my source code. It doesn't help them pirate the game. It makes it harder to pirate the game. So like, it doesn't matter.
So one question,
kind of my take on it.
What was the name of your game? The Dimension of Doom? Is that what it was called?
Transportnators of Doom was the first Phineas and Ferb one,
okay.
And then Dimensionators of Doom was the follow-up they had us do when they had like a across the second dimension, like made for TV movie.
Okay.
Which at some point the working title for the game that they wanted us to put on was Phineas and Ferb Across the Second Dimension, Dimensionators of Doom. And the movie was supposed to be in there. Phineas and Ferb the movie Across the Second Dimension, Dimensionators of Doom. It's like, what?
There's not enough room to put it on the box or the website. It's kind of like Street Fighter the movie, the game. Eventually you run out of
We had to talk them out of that, but it was very important that it was Phineas and Ferb the movie. That could be correct. That was the movie.
Branding, marketing. Yeah, gotta love that. My company is synonymous for creating Chex Quest and then redeveloping Chex Quest. There's actually a playable copy of Chex Quest in one of our lounges. So we've done some things. So then we go from some of the work you've done, where you can find it. So let's move on to something that is out. That was and maybe, unless you want to hit something else, but I was going to hit on Verdant Skies. You want to go there?
Yeah. Okay. So Verdant Skies was the game Andy always wanted to make. Kind of a huge. He always really liked. I'm going to say this wrong. Harvest Moon was the name of the game. And he was kind of the opinion that there was like some kind of like low quality like PC sort of things in that space, but he was like, I want to make a really good one. So we kind of started on on the side while we were working on other stuff. And then he started working on it kind of full time while I was, doing contracts to fund making this game. And like halfway through development of it, the really popular one that's in that genre came out.
Animal Crossing?
No. You're gonna laugh once I say it because it's a super famous game. I
know what you're talking about. Is it? I know you're talking about. It's on Steam.
pixel game where you wander around in a town and do farming stuff. This is not my genre.
No, mine either. Yes, but I know many people are into those games. Was it Stardew Valley?
Stardew Valley, yes, that's it.
Yes.
And he was kind of like, annoyed, like, oh man, this game is so good, and it's in like the genre that I wanted to be in. But ours was never as successful as you just said, Stardew Valley. But it did pretty well for an indie game, I think.
So it was, with you not being as excited about this as your partner.
Well, his baby, right? This was the project
exactly.
he wanted to do.
Yep. So you're kind of the support. You're supporting him. Like, yes, I want to get you through this. So essentially, how did your role change when it was really his baby? Because obviously, he has the insight. He understands the genre, things like that. So how did your role change with that type of move forward?
Well, like I said, there was I was doing a lot of contracting that was like bringing in money so that he could spend part-time, full-time at times working on Verdant Skies. And then I helped out with some like shadery type stuff, the reflections in the game and the shadows and the like perspective effects and it was some like stuff like that I helped out with. But otherwise it was Andy's, it was kind of his baby. Also, his wife worked on it a lot as well. She did a lot of the writing and a lot of the like design for it. And so I was kind of helping, keeping the business rolling while Andy worked on that. And then so Veridian Expanse. The names are similar on purpose, but it's also confusing on purpose to talk about them in the same two sentences. Veridian Expanse is the game I always wanted to make, and so now we sort of like switched that around. Where Andy's been working on stuff to help pay for the development of Veridian Expanse.
It's on Steam currently. Mostly positive reviews. Very good. I guess the question becomes: is this the only way to buy this game? Do you guys also sell your games through your website, or are there any other storefronts you're on?
We don't sell through our website anymore. We used to do that. Just no one wants to buy games outside of like Steam and stuff anymore. But it is also on GOG, I think, as well as Humble Indie Bundle. Humble.
Okay. Oh yeah, perfect.
Oh, what's that called now?
Humble Games. I think it's just
Humble Games.
Them. Yep.
It's on itch as well, actually.
Oh, itch.io. Okay.
Yep. So it's on a bunch of different places. Although like, any developer tell you like still 95% of the sales come from Steam. So
got it. And it sounds like even thinking about mobile probably not worth your time or effort.
For Verdant Skies, no. Yes. It's too like the controls for the game, it just wouldn't really work on mobile, I think. It's just be a bad fit for the platform, I think, in terms of the ergonomics and the style of game. That and also I don't know, we sort of like burned ourselves out on doing mobile stuff.
Sure. So. What about the consoles? Like obviously Switch seems to be a great home for indies. Of course, the store is kind of crowded. A little crazy, little shovelware there. But in regards to it's got a touch screen, handheld experience, and I know cozy games are huge on Nintendo's platform. Animal Crossing was a big thing. So is that something you're interested in?
There actually is like an 80% done Switch version of it that sort of got abandoned. We had a friend that had access to like a dev kit and everything because we've worked on Switch games before. We don't like have a dev kit of our own. And like he was just like, hey, like I want to do this as like a portfolio thing. And like I forget what the deal we worked out exactly was, but he was going to do it and handle all like the Switch stuff. And so we just kind of went, sure, go for it. And then it kind of ended up falling through. They had too many other things to do, but it sort of almost mostly done, was playable. Probably there's spots in it you get stuck because there's like some missing controls and prompts and stuff, but. It was a good stepping stone that we used it to get it Steam Deck verified.
That's great. I was thinking about that because Steam Deck is obviously a new platform. PC has never been in that realm before, and it just seems like now that is kind of a great way to get people into PC gaming, but also feel like a console.
Yeah. And there was some like Andy really doesn't like gamepads, which so like gamepad support was like the last thing he wanted to do on the game. And when whatever something is the last thing you do on a game after everything is done, it's always going to be very difficult to like go back and go, oh,
Exactly.
There's this one piece of UI. I need to somehow make it so you can access it with a gamepad, and that was a lot of frustration and trying to get that all the last mile of that working.
I totally get that. I remember when gamepads became kind of a more of a common thing. I think it was mid 2015, something when Windows finally supported the Xbox controller. That was a big thing for a lot of people because it felt like it opened the door, because some games just don't play with mouse and keyboard very well. And then if you had a non-standard gamepad, I remember playing back in the day with a Mortal Kombat on a 486 computer, and you had a Gravis gamepad. It was horrible, and it had a connector it was a parallel port connector. Horrible. And I'm like, this is not, I don't want to play it this way because it didn't work very well. And so we kind of felt like, well, that's why you have a console. It's simple, it's dumb. Those type of controls. PC is going to be for more, more, I guess, technical games that require, more precision with the mouse. And now we're kind of like, I want to play everything on a PC. So I'm glad we're going down that route. So the Steam Deck gets you kind of there. And if it can run there, it can kind of pretty much run everywhere, which is kind of nice too. The kind of like people have talked about, like with everything going crazy in the world of specs and RAM prices and things like that, it's kind of like maybe if it just runs on the Steam Deck, that's good as a baseline. And then if some things that got more horsepower, cool, but at least we know it'll run there.
Yeah, I certainly know a lot of people who have like started thinking that way too. It's just like, oh, that'll be my min-spec machine, because then people with like a 10-ish-year-old PC or something, it should run fine on that too. Making up numbers, but and then for whatever reason, for Veridian Expanse, I decided my min-spec machine would be a Raspberry Pi 4, just because I got it to run at some point, and I went, oh, well, I guess this has to be my min-spec machine.
It's cheap. I've got one, and yeah, you don't have to worry about that. If it runs on that, obviously, then everything from there is great. So let's pivot to your new project. So let's talk about Veridian Expanse. It's what you were showing when I met you. I mean, what you learned along the way, working on contract projects and all these things, Verdant Skies, what do you feel like was most helpful when you decided to go and move forward with Veridian Expanse?
So Veridian Expanse is written from scratch in C. Kind of wrote every part of it just because I knew I could, because we'd done enough like random, like projects of needing to write OpenGL rendering code for like the mapping software that we worked on, or like Cocos 2D, having worked on that as an engine. I knew a lot of like what I didn't want in an engine or would never ever use. So it was a way that I could like make a custom engine, if you will, with very little effort, because I had no intention of implementing parts that I didn't need, or just because they seemed like they'd be fun to implement in an engine, which isn't exactly true. There's plenty of like cases where I just wanted to like program something, so I did. I feel like a lot of just like our random contracting was just a good use case for like, hey, you don't need like an engine. You don't need you can make a game without using Unity or something, because like people have asked you to write a bunch of the stuff from scratch for non-game stuff as well.
Mm-hmm. So that gets to the point of like engines. Unity, it kind of started as like a free engine to use, but now obviously they have a very interesting, business model. I know
we've gotten
a lot
extremely
of people
burned by them on multiple occasions. Yeah. We're probably going to end up doing a couple more Unity projects, but I would be happy to never ever touch Unity again for various reasons. It's not worth getting into, maybe, but.
So you said you developed your own kind of like you're not reliant on a Unity. So obviously that's a skill set that not everybody has, because that is something where it takes a different skill set. Some people learn on a platform and that's what they're comfortable with and they can continue with. There's a couple other big engines. Some people make proprietary engines. So with this would this kind of be like the basis then you could build off of this game to make other types of games?
Not really, no. I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at, that like a lot of like the engine-y parts of it were exactly custom built for the requirements that were like, here's what I want in the game. I want, like the lighting, and I want normal map stuff. And so I sort of went straight to that part and implemented exactly what I needed to do that. Partly because, like I'd already had the experience before implementing a lot of these stuff for other people, that I knew how to do it. And I knew how to avoid all the hard parts, because whenever you're making your own thing or whatever, like it's really easy to get, like, oh, this shouldn't be that hard, I'll do this, and you find out it's actually like an unsolved problem, and there's no way you will ever fix this. But once you've done like a bunch of that sort of stuff for someone else, like you kind of know like, oh, A, B, F, and Z are the like easy parts. I'll just make something using those, and it's something that I know that I can implement in a few days or hours worth of effort or whatever. And then be able to work from there.
So let's talk about the actual game itself. So Veridian Expanse, you said you have a theme tied to Verdant Skies. So just tell me all about the game, with that story, kind of the gameplay, and why is it a passion project?
Yeah, so Veridian Expanse is the game that I've always wanted to make. It's kind of resource gathering, exploration game, maybe something akin to like Terraria or something like that. Not exactly a survival game, but it's like a crafting exploration game. And the idea is that it exists in the same cinematic universe as Verdant Skies, because why not? One of the first things that happens in Verdant Skies is your pod crashes onto, like this farming planet, and so like you have to end up like paying it off for is part of like a contract, which oddly similar to the thing they did in Animal Crossing later. But so that event that caused that crash in Verdant Skies is actually the same event that causes the story in Veridian Expanse to start, that you end up crashing onto an asteroid, and so now you're kind of stranded there, and it's got these caves that are full of these space bugs, and so you fight the space bugs, and they have the resources you need to build upgrades and craft new weapons, and and then it's kind of light Metroidvania sort of thing where like you get new items that lets you exist better in more difficult biomes. And then so you're trying to escape.
What really strikes my interest is the traversal through this. Has a very, I think of like almost like Asteroids feel, where there's a little bit of physics that would take you. Is that part of it? Like your character, which is, how would you describe your character? I want to say it almost looks like is it a spaceship or is it a creature?
It is a construction pod, is what it's supposed to be.
Okay.
So you're part of a terraforming expedition that was going to terraform one of the other planets. So it's a
construction vehicle of some sort. Yeah.
Yep. Like generic construction vehicle with a bunch of different tools that it can swap out and use. And also, guns for some reason, because shooting space bugs.
Yeah, it has an insect-like look to it, which when I looked, I'm like, is that an insect? It's kind of neat when you see it first. And then there's
was not on purpose until I made the grabber arms. Everyone's like, oh, it's like a crab, and you're eating stuff. And I'm like, it's like, it sure is. I guess I'll lean into it.
And then you have these electrical pathways. That really, I love the lighting, because it does, you talked about lighting, and it really comes alive because you are seeing shadowy bits, and then the lightning, and then what are those lightning pieces? Are they kind of like passive, like momentum or tethers, or?
So the idea is that your ship doesn't have much of a power reserve on it. Once you leave that power network, is what it's called. You have like 10 or 20 seconds worth of reserve power till it runs out. And that was, purely invented for, gameplay reasons.
Exactly. Yeah.
What I wanted to do with it was, from a gameplay standpoint, was kind of like the torches you'd put down in Terraria as you explore a cave. You could just keep exploring endlessly, but by putting down torches, it kind of gives you a little like purpose towards where you want to explore and where you've been, and like it kind of serves a lot of purposes, right? And I wanted to do something that was kind of sci-fi-ish themed like that. So I was like, well, what if you're building out this power network as you go? and that's what lets you go farther. And if you wander off into the darkness and you can't see, you'll die because space bugs will get you. Much like in Terraria.
It does look like there's a momentum built in too, because I see you going really fast. So it's almost like, is that part of it? You get supercharged, or?
No, there's a pathfinding feature that it. So like you can say like a fast travel sort of thing. You can pull up the map and say I want to go here, and then it will just pilot your ship along the power network.
Oh, that's really cool. Because sometimes you don't want to drive; you just want to get me where I need to go, and then I'll think again and do what I want to do. So. With this game, you said has an opening. Is the opening like a cutscene? What's the basis for that, or is like how's your storytelling? You talked about it's kind of connected. So how does that work in regards to we're seeing the gameplay? It's pretty awesome, but is there a different approach when you do a cutscene? Because some games are like it's an engine, some it's just like a comic book or something like that. So what was that process like? At
the start of the game, there's like a little short intro with like five images that it shows you. Kind of classic of a lot of older games that is sort of like from the the 90s or whatever with similar styles. But after that, basically there's like dialogue that comes up like as you so you have a little assistant that's helping you out called Shippy, who is notices, hi, I see you're experiencing some
where did you come up with that name?
I don't know. It's complete creative inspiration on my part. Yes, we'll go with that. At first I thought that would be like a dumb joke that everyone would hate, but everyone laughs at it and everyone loves Shippy.
It's amazing. Gotta love Shippy.
It was just going to be the tutorial character, but everyone loved it enough that I was like, okay, well now Shippy just has to be like the comic relief in the game. So
future merch, it's all building. It's just Shippy's world and we're all living in it.
So there's like little dialogue boxes will pop up when you trigger certain points in the game that were basically just over the screen text. And then the extended parts of the story, there are going to be like message beacons that you find hidden throughout the world, and there's a little puzzle that you have to do to unlock
right them. There.
Yep.
Oh, Shippy.
But yeah, there's like a little puzzle you have to do. Then you can unlock these message buoys, and then you get some extra like backstory. So that's where like the optional like secrets in the game are going to be hidden into. Yeah, so it's kind of in-game text like that. At some point, I'd like to revisit, doing like voiceovers for them, but for I don't know until all the dialogue is finalized, I feel like that's not worth talking about too much.
You know what? At some point, I bet you could find a lot of people that would love to make Shippy come to life with their own voice talents.
I've had a lot of people offer, actually, not Shippy specifically, but.
Oh, okay. Well, that's awesome. Because I have always heard about voice talent, things like that, obviously expensive. And I know obviously not having trained actors sometimes goes wrong, but then I think of certain roles. I think it was the Senua's Sacrifice, Hellblade. The actress they got to do the motion control, she worked for the studio. It just happened to work out that they had a very talented, performer who is also part of the studio, which is kind of neat. And people also want to just perform and be video game famous. So hopefully Shippy does come alive. From there, obviously this is it's wish list it now on Steam. At this point, you do have full controller support for both the Xbox and the PlayStation controller. Is that something you kind of have to map out each variety of controls? Obviously, PlayStation, Xbox, a little different from their control mapping. PlayStation, the DualSense has all those unique haptics and things. Do you have to think much about that when you build it in, or are there tools already really, you can use?
So the library I'm using to handle a lot of the platforms was called SDL. It's a pretty widely used thing. Like underneath a lot of the products, like Unreal Engine on Linux uses SDL, and Godot uses SDL, and I think a bunch of Valve's games use SDL underneath. So it's pretty common, but it has like super generic gamepad handling where it kind of just has like a generic layout for all the controllers because they're all kind of the same, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Just different letters and yeah. Maybe and sticks are here, they're not there, yeah.
Yeah, so like more or less, it's just you say I want the button that's on the left. When you push that one, it does this action and this, and so there's some of that to think about in terms of. I'm not a big PlayStation gamer, but like the accept button on PlayStation is swapped from Xbox, or maybe I'm thinking no, I guess it's Nintendo that it's swapped.
Nintendo, they do the B. I think it's A, B, and yeah. Oh, here we go.
But I mean, like the placement is swapped to them, right? So like on Nintendo, the accept button is on the right and not on the bottom.
Yeah, because usually PlayStation, Xbox, it's the X on the button or the bottom button. So even whatever, it's the bottom. Nintendo, it's like the one on the left or the far right.
Because they switch A and B, in the layouts.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that to think about. If you want to have like a checkbox for to like swap those for conventions, because otherwise so a funny thing that like when you're demoing a game at a convention on gamepads, most people want to play them on gamepads when they go to places, it seems. You can always tell when someone's like a Nintendo player, because they'll constantly be like closing things when they meant to accept them, and it's kind of a problem that's they're not using their own controller on their own time or whatever. That you kind of can't solve it as a demo. It's uniquely a demo problem that they're not using their own hardware they're used to.
Exactly. And quite honestly, now you can, the great thing about Steam is pretty much all bring your own device. They all work like with even Switch, they use open Bluetooth protocols. So if it works on PC, it'll work on Switch, it'll work on iOS and Android typically. So which is kind of nice, but Xbox and PlayStation seem to be the ones that are kind of a little bit different at times, but it's great that you can bring your own device, so then people don't have to complain. They can just adapt to it. So on this journey, you are, like I said, you are on wishlisted now. So are you still actively developing it? Are you more looking at a time to launch it? What's kind of like that final, the old used to going gold. Do you have like a going gold, like a goal for the game?
Getting real close to finishing it. At this point, there's some stuff I'll be demoing at in April where I want to have it almost done by. And for sure, like at this point, the next Steam Next Fest is applications for that are in April. So and then that's Perfect. For the one that's in June. So probably want to release it right after that June one. But I still want to have it like basically ready to go by this spring, because there's other stuff that we need to work on to make actual money instead of continuing to make a game that it's not ready to release yet. But it's getting really close. Starting to feel the pressure of like finishing it and polishing all the little bits and trying to make it great. And to be honest, like part of it's just waiting to try to use Steam Next Fest to market it, to actually push the go button to release it. But otherwise, really, really want to have it done by this spring.
Excellent, very exciting. I would say, folks, wishlist it. It'll be there. I wishlist the games I'm interested in. It helps, obviously, you understand who the potential audience is. You can communicate to them. Even on the website, you can go there. There's press information there for people to cover the game. And I would love to keep people in the loop on the game. So I'll be following it and sharing. And I'm excited. And so with that, obviously we have people are very excited for this game. A lot of people have saw it. I know they were lighting up because the game really stands out. That's why I was like, oh, this looks really cool. Very unique. I like the game style. I love the way it looks. It looks like an interesting tape. And now Shippy has me even more excited because I'm like, oh, I love the personality, because you're now bringing it. It's not just faceless or something like there's a sense of humor about it, but also you always want that companion along your path with you, because sometimes it's scary out there. So it's good to have Shippy along for the ride. So I really love the fact that you have balanced your creative work with contract work, working with other companies, being able to use your skills to help other companies realize what they wanted to do. So if someone wanted to get into do what you have done in some way or the other, are there any like recommendations regarding like this is the education you should probably go after just as a baseline, and then specialize? Any specific tools that they should probably just look into or training? Because sometimes people are like, I want to do it, I just don't know how to get there. Like you said, you went to college to get into computer science, and then it's like it just kind of you found your own path. So in this day and age, with all the tools that are available, the training, the skills, any just level set and feedback to say this is a great place to start and go from there.
Yeah. From my standpoint, I think a great place to start is something like Pico 8, which is sort of this fake console. It bills itself as a fantasy console. It's like, what if, it was like 8-bit machine that never really existed, but you can make games with that aesthetic to it. And it's really easy to work with. It's got built-in little editors. It's scripted in this easy-to-use language called Lua. And so it has kind of like the trappings of, computers in the 80s, you turn them on and you have a basic prompt and you can just start typing in stuff. But it's also like much more productive than those because the basic on those was not very good. Versus Lua is like a real language. You can write really interesting, cool stuff in. And there's just a ton of really cool Pico 8 games. It's really limited so that like you don't have to... you're not like starting with a empty canvas and it could be anything, right? Like there's totally like a style of game you're going to make for it that's going to look very retro, and the sprites are going to be small, so it's you don't have to spend time making like the best sprites ever necessarily, but also like gives you a lot of room to like there's the learning curve at the beginning is very like gets you up really high, but you can go really deep with Pico 8 too. There's some like weird low level-y type things if you really want to get into them to make like really interesting nonsense in Pico 8, and certainly like having like a good art background, you can make really, really cool stuff with Pico 8. But it's just kind of like a leveling factor in terms of I've seen people make really cool stuff with Pico 8, and it sort of just like gave them the confidence to realize that like, hey, I can read the documentation for this. It's like a few pages long, and I get all of it, and I can just like start making stuff with it.
That's really unique. I mean, there's been some attempts that from like, I think Nintendo has Game Builder Garage, and Minecraft has kind of taught some people on like, hey, experiment, see what you can come up with. Yeah. And this is super cute. And the software is like $15. And then it's for many different platforms. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of runs on about anything. And like Celeste was the first version of Celeste was made in Pico 8. So there's a bunch of like fairly famous Pico 8 games that have kind of come out of it. And I don't know, like, and once you've done a bunch of those, you can be like, I want to graduate to something that's a little more like batteries included or whatever. You can move to like a bigger 3D engine. But yeah, despite like what you're making in Pico 8 is kind of making a game from scratch, because it's like so simplified. In my opinion, it's just way easier to like get into it and learn from it. And there's a whole bunch of like educational bits for it too, because this is like a thing where they use in schools where there's how to get into programming. Oh, if you can use this Pico 8 thing and start making games. And the other cool thing about them is kind of like 80s like is when you're playing any Pico 8 game, you can sort of just hit escape and then like look at their code and change their sprites.
Wow! So you can see behind the curtain. Yeah,
yep, it's kind of like great. Just open by default, and so it's kind of easy to like you were talking about earlier, like that modding mentality. Like I don't know how to make a game, but I know how to modify this one, because then you can start one little bit at a time to get into game dev, and that's sort of like built into the ethos of Pico 8.
Yeah, and I see they have a website for educators, schools. And then
I've known several people whose like kids have done it as a way to get into programming. So it's not super complicated. Only something like super smart people can use to make fancy games with or whatever.
It looks like they have other tools for like voxels, which I love voxels. All those little pixels flying around. So amazing. Wow, that's amazing. I think that's an awesome idea of like just play around, and then from there, where does like formal education fall into working in the industry these days?
So depending on what you want to make, you don't need a CS degree to make games. There's certain parts it might help for, but there's so much tooling that's kind of can be used without having, computer science background. Maybe you can be more efficient if you had the computer science background, or go deeper, or make fancier, whatever. But you don't need it. It's sort of, you can kind of learn it as you want, and learn it as you go. Is kind of my opinion. So like I do value my computer science background. It gives me a lot of like depth to a lot of the things that I've wanted to do that are more technical. But I don't know if it just doesn't make me a better game designer. And I don't know if it makes me make better games. I think it allows me to make a different niche of games, like the fancy lighting stuff I did for Veridian Expanse. That's something because I had like a lot of math background. And so I wanted to use that as one of my strengths that was very forward in the presentation of the game, that people are going to look at and go, wow, that looks really cool. But you don't need any of that to make, like, you can just make a straight up pixel art game. And there's plenty of examples that have been really successful. They're just, they did really good art, or they did really good whatever. Yeah. So I would just say that, like, if you want to get into games, try something small like Pico 8, or there's some other like small easy tools like that, and just try making something, and you'll find out what you don't know. You'll find out the parts you like, that you want to go deeper on. Yeah. And starting small is good, because it allows you to really actually get into something without getting frustrated by reading pages and pages and pages of documentation.
And is there any type of like communities you would say are probably a good one to like join, or like, I know there's tons of Reddit groups, things like that, but is like there any like the collaborative work, people talking about ideas and maybe talking to each other? I know my wife is part of a lot of different author groups. She's a local author, but also does something else. But she has found an amazing author group that has been very helpful to her. I mean, so is there any like you'd say in the Twin Cities, or maybe that like this would be a great community or a Discord that would be a great place to just ask questions, maybe learn more?
Yeah, so in the Twin Cities, we have IGDA TC. It's a local chapter of the IGDA group. It's super active. We have basically every Wednesday there's an event going on, and sometimes more, because there's some special interest groups as well. Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of groups like that in lots of different places. I used to be, part of a bunch of like online groups, and it feels like they've all kind of like faded away into like, they got absorbed by Reddit or Discord or whatever. So now there's like big monolithic groups of those, but I feel like the smaller ones have all kind of just been absorbed into, the mega structure of the internet. But, my experience like IGDATC is it's always just super rewarding to go and chat with people and learn new things. And yeah.
It looks like their schedule allows them to have events and things and connects in any way that probably is valuable to people in different areas. So that's great to have that. And speakers,
programming stuff, and art stuff, and writing, and special interest stuff. Like the most recent one was a guy talking about his. I want to say it was a master's thesis project about like rediscovering his Mongolian heritage, because he was adopted as a child, and so doing a game was sort of like a way to help reconnect with his heritage. So and there's always like interesting stuff like that that's separate from the like how do you program a game, how do you make art for a game, how do you make sound for a game parts, right? It's how to make games art or culture.
Probably good for networking, just to get to know other people that are skilled or have questions, and then potentially could turn into collaboration or a partnership like yourself, which, it's great to have someone along for the ride.
Yeah, and game jams are a really good way to do that kind of stuff too. The Global Game Jam was 2-ish weeks ago. Yeah, it's just apparently the Minneapolis one, not counting ones at universities, we were the third largest in the world.
Wow! I know, and we've had I'm going to kill the name. Games Done Quick. We have a local Super Games Done Quick here as well, right? I believe.
Sounds familiar.
Then
yeah, there's an acronym that people always say. I don't remember what it means.
Yeah, Yeah, it's basically the speedrunners and things like that. We also have some great game journalism podcast groups here with MinMax and also Giant Bomb. Dan Reichert's here local as well. So I think there's a lot of great ways to get connected to that too. So Scott, if you I think there's great ways to get you connected to those groups too, to talk about your game, because I think they would love to talk about and highlight many Minnesota creators. They're a great group.
Sure, yeah, I'd love that.
So with that, we've had a great discussion about what you do, the games you make, your journey. But I just want to ask you a little fun question before we wrap up the episode. I know you are doing a lot of work, but do you have any games you're playing now that you're just really enjoying?
Oh, my wife and I just finished Abiotic Factor. That one was pretty good.
I don't know that one. What's the premise?
Basically, the premise is crafting survival game in Half-Life. You're in an underground super science facility, and some portal nonsense happened, and now everything's terrible, and there's monsters everywhere, and you have to find office supplies to make improvised weapons and fight the monsters, and it's super super good. It's clearly just like a labor of love by the devs of all the games that they love. It's just full of homages to various things. You skip to the next video. This is like the Christmas.
Oh, got it. It's always Christmas in this town.
No, they just added some Christmas stuff.
Got it. Okay.
But basically, it's like what if Half-Life, but a cooperative crafting survival game, and it's great.
Oh, very cool. And I know Valve has been very hey, I'll allow you guys to make essentially a Half-Life 2 remake, or no, Half-Life 1 with that.
Other than the theme of it, or the idea that it's in a super science facility with portals that had some science catastrophe, there's nothing that makes it Half-Life. It's just, it obviously is Half-Life, but it didn't use any of their IP or anything.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. I don't know. Is that something where, what is it? What's the engine that they use?
Source?
Yes, Source Engine. I don't know if they allowed that to be used by others. Is that kind of an open source engine now that they allow others to use older versions?
I don't think it's open source, but it is something that you can get and build on top of. They have a SDK or something. I've never really looked into it, but I've heard people talk about how they like making stuff with Source Engine for various reasons.
Got it. Well, that's cool. That this game I've not heard of, and it just looks very much like you make the game what you want it to be. And gaming with your significant others is always awesome. My wife lied to me when we were first dating. She goes, "I love video games," and then not so much anymore. That's okay. She loves work, so it's kind of fun. So that's what you're playing now. But in the future, are there any games you're very excited about coming out soon or in the future that you're that is going to be something that's going to make me so happy?
That's a good question. I don't know. I haven't really kept up with trailers for that sort of stuff. A lot of times, I just hear about stuff like word of mouth. Let's open up my Steam.
The Game Informer release calendar is pretty good for those type of games. I know the games that are big that are coming out. Resident Evil Requiem is coming out. There's a few others that are interesting. That should be interesting. There's a new Capcom game called blanking on the name, Pragmata, that looks really unique. But those type of games that I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I can't really think of anything off the top of my head, but Subnautica 2, I know there's a lot of controversy about how it was I'm still looking forward to that. It looks like it's really cool. And one of the local people at IGDATC is working on the art for it now. So she's kind of dispelled a lot of the rumors about the company that bought them, wanted everyone to use AI, mandatory AI usage. And she as an artist was no, they told us you're not allowed to. So,
oh, really? Wow. Yeah. And are you primarily a PC gamer?
Yep.
Okay. So the good thing is, though, being a PC gamer now, very few games don't come to PC, which is amazing. So you get everything from Xbox games, PlayStation games. The only thing that really doesn't come there is Nintendo games, which is a shame.
Yeah, I really in the last couple of years, I really enjoyed the Horizon games. I never really had a PlayStation, but those were great. And came to Steam and I played them.
Yeah, there's games for everyone. So depending on what you want to play, there's just a million things. And if you even like World of Warcraft, apparently there's another expansion. So they don't stop. It never stops with and then I know they just released a new character class for Diablo 2, the resurrected version too. So if you're a Diablo fan, the Warlock is out now, I believe. So yeah, there is tons available. And obviously the big game that no one knows if it's really going to happen or not is GTA 6. And of course, they never launch a PC version until like a year after. So you can just, if you are that type of gamer, you got another year to wait for that. So, well, very good, Scott. This has been very entertaining, very educational for myself. I know nothing about this. I work in logistics and supply chain and sourcing, so I don't get to do more of the creative things. The only creative thing is I get to play around with my format of my podcast and find cool guests. So it's been great having you on the podcast. So before we wrap this up, what would you like to share on where people can find what you're doing, ways to reach out to you, and hopefully buy all your games?
Well, yeah, we have our games on Steam. You can wishlist Veridian Expanse or buy Earth and Skies. I would really appreciate that. As far as where to find me, I'm mostly on Mastodon. I do have a Blue Sky that you contacted me through, which, as you found out, was not something I check very often, unfortunately.
It's fine.
Yep. But like I have my website. I've got a bunch of random game like NES games that I've made that you can play in your web browser on there for like game jams and stuff.
Yeah. And there we are. And look at that. Oh, no Rob the Robot though. That's okay. I forgive you. Yeah, Critical Match, Treasure Stack. So yeah, check these out. That should be fun to try those out. And those are all browser based.
Yep, they're emulated in the browser, and the ones in the middle are made in 48 hours for a game jam. So I have low expectations for those. But
nice. Well, a little bit of genius comes sometimes in a very quick format. Well, very, very good, folks. Get excited, and Scott, I'm gonna wish you Godspeed. Code fast, polish fast. Get ready for that Steam Next Fest. We want to see your game up there. We want to play a demo or watch you play it on Steam. Very excited for this, and can't wait to see after that's done. Obviously, you're probably planning the next thing you're going to work on. So I'm assuming the only thing that you have a lack of is time. Is typically what we all run into.
Yep.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Scott. Folks, you can find me and myself at Todd Oxtra, at T Oxtra. That's my socials, but really the important places. The Fandom Foundry, our podcast network is growing. We're doing some really cool new things in the world of sports and makers and games and all the cool things that people are doing today. We do podcasts like the MakerCast to really highlight the amazing people who make the things we love. And hopefully one day you'll be one of those makers too I talk to. But also check out our Discord, check out our YouTube channel, check out our podcast services, leave a review, rate us, and let us know what we're doing. We want more people to check out the stuff we make. So with that, Scott, thank you for sharing your talents and making awesome games. Have a good night and good luck.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
Thanks. Have a good night.